Davi-tech-media. Subscribe to Davi-tech-media. Davi-tech-media. Subscribe to Davi-tech-media.
State House should not be interfering in the prosecution of criminals in Zambia, whether they are UPND, whether they are PF, whether they are MMD, whether they are children of Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, whether they are my children, whether it's ACA. Everyone must be prosecuted on the same level. Okay? Now, let me tell you what I think happened. Let me tell you what I think happened. Mr. Hakainde Hichilema announced that there will be no sacred cows in the fight against corruption. The question is, what has happened? What has happened? You cannot have a president that interferes in the dispensation of justice in the country. You can't. Now, the president announced a policy, as they should, that we are going to recover the money that has been stolen by those that stole. The way the government recovers assets stolen from the public funds, from the public property, from the public by those that commit those crimes is two ways. Number one, the government, through law enforcement, can seize properties of or properties that are suspected to be proceeds of crime. That's number one. Number two, government can decide to prosecute people, and those people go to jail or prison, and then government repossesses those properties and seizes those assets. Now, in this process, the president, the only role of the president, in my understanding, is a role of policy. The president announced a policy. I want my law enforcement agencies to, to prioritize repossession, bringing back the money, bringing back the money that these people stole. That's what the president's policy has been as priority number one. What does that mean? What that means is that as the law enforcement execute the prosecution of crimes, especially economic crimes, one of the things that they're looking at is recovery of public funds. Okay? And do I agree with that policy? I don't. Because from the beginning, I've been saying you have to arrest these people and prosecute them so that we have what we call a deterrent. A deterrent from future corruption, from future embezzlement of public funds, from future mismanagement of public funds. And that's what I've said time and again. I've said the president should have, from the beginning, should have announced zero tolerance to corruption, and should have announced and given a strategic policy to prosecute those that those cases that can be prosecuted successfully in the courts of law. They should have been prosecuted. The FIC, the Financial Intelligence Corporation, run by Ms. Chirwa then, had uncovered grand corruption schemes in Zambia. where rich people were running cartels of money laundering in banks across the financial systems in Zambia. What has happened to those cases? What has happened to what Ms. Chirwa was uncovering at FIC? Those are questions that a lot of Zambians have. We talked about corruption, and we saw evidence of corruption. What has happened to those cases? And I've been saying the same thing. You have to arrest these people and prosecute them. Let the law enforcement prosecute these people. For Milingo Lungu, who is a lawyer himself, to decide to take that's called in the developed countries, that is called a plea agreement. A plea agreement that actually gives you immunity for prosecution is when you can give the state something in return. What has Milingo given the state in return? What has Mr. Milingo given the state in return for the agreement that we have? Because you have to give something. What has been given in return to the Department of Public Prosecution for them to have a immunity from prosecution agreement? That's what we need to know. The Director of Public Prosecution needs to come and answer questions with the media, meet the media, explain the basis for the agreement that you have signed. She signed the agreement. She signed that agreement. What has the state gained out of that agreement? Those are questions, Zambians, you should be asking. Now, let me explain. And you're right, James. You're right. Most likely, and I'm going to speculate here because I don't know that that's what happened. My theory is that Milingo was asked, was court-appointed liquidator for KCM. The only way you can remove a liquidator is by a court process. I'm explaining to you. The only way you can remove a court-appointed liquidator is by a court process. And Milingo Lungu was going to stand in the way of reorganizing KCM. And KCM, as a mining conglomerate that employs a lot of people, and it has a lot of copper belt businesses' interest. The UPND government is thinking Milingo Lungu is going to be a stumbling block, and it will take us a long time to finish the process to have him removed as a liquidator and administrator, adjudicator of KCM. So in their thinking, they're thinking, okay, let's have an agreement with him. He resigns on his own. We take over KCM, we reorganize it, place it under ZCCM Investments Holding, and then turn around and find an equity partner that can come and invest and revamp KCM. That is the only logical, policy directive that I see probably came from State House. I'm explaining to you what I think was the basis for DPP to enter into non-prosecutorial agreement with Mr. Milingo. Mr. Milingo could not be removed as a liquidator for KCM, and KCM is sitting in a limbo right now. And so because of economic interests of KCM as a mining conglomerate, so that we can revamp KCM, the government, now I'm talking about the government as an executive, President Hakainde and his team probably thought, okay, the one way to remove Milingo Lungu out of the equation in the KCM saga is to have him resign. Instead of us going to court to have him removed, it will take us years before the court can conclude, because Milingo can continue appealing up to the Supreme Court. You understand me, eh? The only reason, the way the president is looking at it in revamping KCM, and Milingo Lungu was a stumbling block, because Milingo Lungu was appointed by the courts to be a liquidator for KCM. You cannot revamp KCM with someone sitting as a liquidator. Right now, Zambia Investments, Zambia Consolidated Copper Mine Investments, so ZCCM IH, has no powers to do anything. No one has powers to do anything for KCM until the liquidator is removed out of the equation. You understand me, eh? I'm giving you a speculative reason why I think State House can say, look, in the interest of revamping the copper belt economy and revamping production of copper in the copper belt, let's get this guy out of the way. And because he's going to be a pain in our behind, let's agree with him. Don't appeal or don't move out on your own. And in return, we are going to give you immunity from prosecution for what you did at KCM. Eh? Moneni. Let me speak to the people in the copper belt. The president realized that Milingo Lungu as a liquidator of KCM. You have to remember where we are coming from with KCM. KCM was put under liquidation, and it's one of the largest mining conglomerate in the copper belt and in the world. The only way we are going to sort out KCM and find the equity partner to come and invest in KCM and increase production, the president looked at it this way. If we were going to get Milingo out of the way, the only way to do it is to have him to resign. Because if we go to court, it will take us 2 years at the minimum to conclude the case. And KCM was going to be in the limbo for 2 years. So the only way we can do it is ask him to resign on his own. If he resigns, we can then have Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines move in and take over. If Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines take over KCM, that's a government taking over KCM. Once the government takes over KCM, then the government can go out to the market and say, we have a mine for sale. We want an equity partner. We want an investor to come and invest in the KCM production processes. That's the basis. That's the only logical basis for the policy direction of having Milingo not prosecuted. And you see what happened? He resigned. Milingo resigned, paving way for Zambia Consolidated Copper Mine on behalf of government to take over KCM. When government takes over KCM, then they can go out there and invite investors to invest in KCM. The president is looking at creating jobs. His interest is economic on the copper belt. Economics on the copper belt. That is what's happening right now. Ala mwila vepwa. Mwila vepwa ma Zambians. The president has no authority to tell the DPP to stop prosecuting someone. The only thing the president can do is give a policy guidance. This is my policy. I'm placing jobs first. I want jobs in the mines. I want jobs at KCM. The only problem is Milingo Lungu. Milingo Lungu is a liquidator appointed by the court. I can't just remove him. The only way I can remove him is, number one, go to court and have him removed. And that process is going to take long. And KCM is going to be in a limbo for a long time. Because if the Attorney General went to court and decided they're going to take Milingo Lungu out as a liquidator, Milingo Lungu would have responded with an application for, stay of execution, pending judicial review. And this was going to continue going on a technical grounds for a long time. And the people in the copper belt that supply KCM were going to be in a limbo. So the only basis, again, the only basis for that agreement is first jobs at KCM. It's economic jobs. They want to reorganize KCM because after Milingo, the liquidator leaves, it's now open for investors, the shareholders, ZCCM Investments Holding, to take over the mine and reorganize it, and then invite equity partners to invest in that mine, so that we can create jobs in the copper belt at KCM mines, and we can provide supply contracts to many of you that live in the copper belt. The stumbling block here was Milingo. That's why. Okay? That's what's happening, Mwebantu. Don't be fast. Look at things. That's why I've been refusing on this platform for anyone who comes here and say, no, forget about the past, because the past is haunting us. Zambian, don't let anybody come and tell you, forget about the past, because the past is what is causing the things that are happening right now. Belami bepa bantu. Belami bepa yo. The president didn't sign that agreement because he wanted to let Milingo Lungu go. That's not it. That's not the reason. That's not the reason. They're not telling you the reason. And the government machinery, the media machinery is not doing justice. That's why I'm coming to Zambia this year. I'm coming and I'll spend a month so that we can correct the narrative. The narrative is wrong. Milingo hasn't won. Milingo hasn't won. Milingo has only been given immunity from prosecution on the cases pertaining to KCM and those criminalities around that. And I want you to know, I'm not speaking on behalf of the DPP. I'm not speaking on behalf of the government. I'm giving you speculative reasons and logical reasons to conclude why the agreement has been made. That's what's happening. The interest of the president is jobs, jobs, jobs. Is increasing production. If you remember, the president and his economic team have projected that they want to increase output of copper exponentially in the next few years. There's no proper the problem is communication. The problem is communication at government. The government spokesperson is not explaining to the people why certain policy decisions are being taken. Now, I want to repeat for those that have joined us. I'm telling you right now, the only reason why the president could have said, guys, let's have an agreement here, is because he wants to reorganize KCM. He wants to reorganize KCM. Otherwise, unless you want KCM to go under and declare bankruptcy, you have to reorganize that mine. And Milingo is a liquidator, court-appointed liquidator. You can't reorganize the mine without Milingo. You cannot reorganize the mine KCM without Milingo. Milingo is the only court-appointed liquidator. To remove Milingo, you have to institute a court process. The problem is communication. The problem is communication. They are not communicating to the Zambian people properly. They are not telling the people what's happening, what's behind the policy decisions. Milingo couldn't just be removed. Milingo couldn't just be removed. It was going to take 2 years to run a court process to remove Milingo. You remember, when President Lungu wanted to repossess KCM, he found it hard. He found it very hard to repossess that company from Agawa, from India, from the Indians. The same way, because Milingo was appointed by the court, you have to go to court to remove the liquidator. The only way to do it is go to court. The president knew that this is going to take long, and KCM will those mines will flood. Those mines, those underground mines will flood. And people that are owed by KCM won't be paid because Milingo Lungu wasn't paying the suppliers. The issue is reorganization of KCM. The issue is ensuring we can all decide, Lord, let's prosecute Milingo and remove him as a liquidator. The problem is that Milingo was going to drag the government through court processes that were going to take long. So the only way to do it was to have him agree to resign. If he resigns, it paves way for government to come in and reorganize that mine.
Davi-tech-media. Subscribe to Davi-tech-media. Davi-tech-media. Subscribe to Davi-tech-media.